Coming up on this week's Royal Exclusive, is Harry about to pull the plug on his UK comeback? Why is the King's tax bill making headlines? And has Charles quit Buckingham Palace for good? Welcome to this week's show where Harry's plans to bring Meghan, Archie, and Elizabeth back to Britain are hanging by a thread after another security rouse. So is this midget all over again? Meanwhile, the king has revealed he's paid nearly $30 million in tax, but is the real story the £100 million bill facing taxpayers to fund the monarchy? And after spending $369 million refurbishing Buckingham Palace, Charles has reportedly decided he doesn't want to live there after all. I'm Matt Wilkinson, royal editor of The Sun. And joining me to unpack it all, our royal reporter for news, Bronte and Talk TV host Mark Dolan. Welcome to you both. Now, look, Mark, what's been going on in the last days and weeks? We have a situation where Harry has announced that he's going to come over with his children. They're going to accept a royal house and all the security that comes with it. And then we learn, oh no, hasn't actually accepted it at all. And he's now saying, well, actually, if I don't have security, I can't bring the children. Look, the circus has been built. The tent has been built. The plot of land is there. Are we going to get our performers coming over? Is anyone going to pay to see them? Well, this row is not logistical. That's certainly how the Sussexes are painting it, and their relentless, ruthless public relations machine that this is logistics is about safety. It isn't. It's political, and it's family politics. And what Harry and Meghan, I think, have identified is an historic opportunity to get that 24/7 armed security whenever they're in the UK, and potentially with that precedent set when they're overseas. So they've got King Charles over a barrel because we know that he wants to see his grandchildren. And the wider aspect of this is that you cannot do business with the Sussexes because if you try to have an arrangement where you're generous, you say, this trip is going to happen with our blessing. That's the palace. We will even provide royal accommodation, and it's most likely Charles will meet his grandchildren. There will be photographs and all the rest of it. Even having rolled out that red carpet, you've got trouble. And that is classic Sussex. Classic Sussex. Classic. There's a great line. Class is classic Sussex. It feels like classic Sussex. It feels like Majid all over again with all this toing and throwing. Bronte, on Friday night, do you remember we were given an up note? Exactly. This is what's going to happen. They're going to come over. We're guaranteed that the children are coming over. Meghan's coming over. This is where we're going. But they also said in that up note, oh, by the way, we don't actually have security yet. And then within 24 hours or 48 hours, they suddenly changed their mind and said, oh, now it's all up in the air because, as we knew yesterday, we don't have security. Do you think they have ever had any intention to come along with the children? Any intention to see this up note out, or is it just classic Sussex games? Well, here's the thing. You used the word circus before, and I think that is the perfect word for it. I was staggered by the turn of events that happened over the weekend. It is staggering to me that when there has clearly been this reputational rehab push in Britain and everything was laid out a couple of weeks ago and the plans were in place for them to come over here, and there was going to be all Vegas games, and of course the motion of conciliation, which was to come in, our church like but check my phone cam. I welcome to my tail. So it might change in 5 minutes, but they're still sticking by that note on Friday night that it's all going to go ahead with the children. But yeah, sorry. Yes, it is confirmed until it's not. But with that said, it is already a disaster now. This is now the story. No matter what happens, we're days away from their planned arrival, and it is now a disaster. And the thing is, Harry has played X. This is the part that staggers me. He has played so clearly into the hands of his biggest critics because all that they are ever accused of by people that they're detractors is this is emotional blackmail. There's a circus around you. Everything has to be very dramatic. It's a soap opera. Whether you believe that or not, the optics are, well, what is this? This is exactly what it looks like. I don't think he's emotionally blackmailing his father, if I can be, to be frank. I think he's being emotional. I think he's reacting to information he got at the end of last week. But it doesn't matter whether he is doing that or not. It's exactly what it looks like. Well, the critics do say it is emotional blackmail, and some people argue, does he actually ever intend to genuinely bring the children over, or is this, as Mark pointed out, a political game with the family? Well, from what I've heard from people close to them, is that because the question is, why were these plans confirmed then if we didn't have that security package already in place? But the security package said it wasn't when they confirmed the plans, and then they said, "Oh, actually I think I can answer that." Okay, go on. Right. And I don't want to hear the rest of your thought, but I just to answer that question about why would they say they're coming and then potentially not. That's a bear trap. And again, we're back to classic Sussex. It's what they do because you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. We saw that with the late Queen, who rolled out the red carpet for Meghan, broke convention to make her comfortable. What happens? Throws it back in her face. You cannot give these people enough. And you're so right that what they've done with regard to this, it was a good news story, wasn't it? They were going to come back. The king was going to meet grandkids. Potential rehabilitation. Who knows? Maybe even a handshake between William and Harry behind the scenes. That's certainly no. That's you've gone too far this time, Mark. We've all had a drink. That, by the way, I will on the record, that is the wish of Theo Rife, who is Charles's fixer, who wants that to happen. But as you say, go whistle. But the bottom line is it's gone from a good news story and what Harry and Meghan have done. They're very self-destructive. They have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory here. It's actually unbelievable what I've been hearing from that side, because again, to that question, why were plans so advanced to the point of being confirmed with an ops note if this wasn't all in place, and if this was still the sticking point? And what I'm hearing is he was led to believe, because this review had been announced at the end of last year, that Harry had reason to believe, and I don't know the specifics of it at all, but he had reason to believe that he would be getting the protection that he wanted. Now, obviously, he's gotten this news on Friday around about the same time as the operational note went out. And he's gotten really emotional about it. And to the original point I was making, even if you're going to be objective about it, I don't know his motivations. But even if you're going to say, maybe this really is just him being very afraid for his family and the threats that he feels that they have here, it doesn't matter because now the war's been lost anyway. Was he worried about Meghan when she went to Paris on her own for Paris Fashion Week, or their trips on holiday to South America, or the fact that they live in America, the United States, a great country where you have a legal right to own a handgun? How is it not secure to take your children to Buckingham Palace, where there are literally soldiers out there that have fought in wars, and also police officers with machine guns, have your children there to meet the king? How is that not safe? How on earth how can you reach that conclusion? I've got a rhetorical question for you both. When was the last time that you might have to answer this? Don't worry, I'll answer it. But when is the last time that we heard that William had taken George, Charlotte, and Louis round to see their grandfather? You don't, because it isn't a song and dance. We know nothing about those kids, and one of them is going to be king. It's amazing how little we know about them, which demonstrates that it is possible for the royal family to have a private existence. William is proving it. You don't have to announce it. Correct. I do not understand, Bronte, why he has to announce that he's bringing the children over and tag it in with a bunch of engagements. We wouldn't care. He wouldn't notice if he flew in on a commercial jet or a private jet with his kids, went to Highgrove one weekend, see his dad and go off and go back to US. No one would have noticed. No one would care. You've made it a big song and dance. And I just do not get what they're getting. Well, I think it was probably a little bit, and this is pure speculation, but a temperature check. It's a big story that they were all going to come over, and obviously they wanted the attention. Well, yeah, it's so divvy. Well, Meghan and especially, but Harry and Meghan have been very divisive here in Britain. And I think that possibly having the story out, was giving people a little bit of time to get used to it. And again, this is pure speculation. Releasing bad news early. I don't know. It's like politicians releasing things on a Friday night. I think what they wanted to do is just say this is exactly what we're doing to avoid the situation where people are debating it right up to the day. But that's backfired because then it fell apart. The children obviously would love Charles to see his two grandchildren. They probably don't have much memories of Charles because they were very young. It was Queen's Platinum Jubilee about 4 years ago. So they need new memories to meet. So we understand why the children would want to come over. We understand why Harry would want to bring them over. What's in it for Meghan? I think her brand, because she's in trouble professionally. She's less and less popular in the United States. Her personality, her personal ratings are dropping. And the problem is that the US is her home territory. It's really her main customer base. whether it's for her broadcast products or indeed the As Ever brand and the jam and the flowers and all the rest of it. So I think that Harry wants to come back to the UK because he misses his family. He misses his royal activities and he misses England. He misses the UK and he wants his grandkids to spend time with their grandfather. And for Meghan, it's business. I believe that Meghan is pathologically transactional, and so I think this trip is strategic for her, and I think it's emotional and nostalgic for Harry, which I think is, by the way, a big tension within the marriage. I think that the two people want very different things in terms of the UK. I think Meghan sees a return to the UK as well as a chance to recalibrate those royal credentials to go back to the royal well so she can be Duchess again, because that's fading in the US. And with the invitations to stay in the palace, which we still don't know what those whether it's been freaking never driven and the optic effect and the royal like the royal or the fully very although this way Yes, exactly. So no matter what her motivations, you cannot deny that that is going to be a huge boost for them after all these years. Those optics, if you remember after Harry lost the High Court trial just over a year ago, now we thought this whole security row was over. It's not. He said that it would be impossible to bring his wife and children without the security that he demands. If he was to fly out regardless without any change in the security, is he therefore a hypocrite? I think that Harry simply needs to get out of his own way when it comes to the security. I will say this, we won't, as you well know, it's been years and years of this security battle, and it's getting into the weeds in it. There's so many details. I do understand fundamentally his point. I think his motivation is a genuine fear for his family. But with that said, he just has to accept, as you said, it has been a year since he lost in the Court of Appeal. He must now pivot. He must now make different plans and get out of this. It feels like he's very, very stuck in this. It has to be the police protection or nothing at all. Why does he need armed police in the UK, like you say, but nowhere else, including Ukraine, which is last time I checked at war, and he's there every 10 minutes. And we know that the couple travel the world, without armed bodyguards. I think this has been a confusing point for everyone, myself included. But I think what we're told is that for whatever information he's been given, he seems to think that Britain holds the greatest threat to his family I don't know where that information absolutely nonsense. I mean, I can offer you some input. So I bumped into Ken Wolfe 2 days ago.
Oh, lovely Ken, yeah.
And he was responsible. He's a great guy and of course was responsible for Diana's security for many years, her chief bodyguard. And he said that this is all nonsense. It's a lot of fuss and nonsense about nothing. He said that, first of all, there's a liaison. So Harry and Meghan will have their own private security, and there's the UK liaison, he said. There's no way that the UK authorities or the king will allow Harry to come to harm when he's in the UK. And he said to me, which is a theory that I've long fostered but didn't have foundation for, that it's about the blue lights, and it's about the helicopters and the police outriders. It's the status that comes with the royal arm protection that Harry dogged with the self-image of being the spare wants to be the main man. Well, this is really fascinating because what also happened this week, I think, was on Monday when there was a kind of almost like an angry statement that I think came out from the Sussexes, and they referenced about Salman Rushdie and Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift was given blue light kind of escorts to her tour in the UK because there have been terror threats that were out there to cancel some of the tours in Austria. And also Salman Rushdie had a fact wire issued against him for about 30 years from the Ayatollah of Iran, and there was an assassination attempt on him recently. But they referenced the fact that how come Salman Rushdie and Taylor Swift get this protection and he doesn't? Does he have a point? Should we just say it would end so much drama? It's not going to, we'll talk about money later. It's not going to cost that much money. Just give the crying toddler what he wants and all the drama would just finish. Why? Why not just devil's advocate? Just let him have security mentally, and especially because we've discussed personally, and we've discussed it so many times in the show. I'm thinking just exactly, let's just draw the line in the you're a mother. What do you do with a child if they're moaning and winging this? Yeah. Honestly, just a TV remote. Take the iPad, I'm going to the pub. I think the official answer is you don't give them what they want. But in this case, it is this one trip. Again, I don't know what information he and his team are privy to that he is this concerned about it, and that they have drawn those comparisons where, as you say, Taylor Swift had said they just had that massive threat elsewhere. So I don't know what that is. I don't think there's going to be any end in sight to this until he does actually make his first trip over here. And we know that they're apparently working through other options for how that could look. Potentially they all come and stay in one of the palaces, let's say Buckingham Palace for example, and the children and Meghan can just stay behind those palace walls and obviously conduct their business from there. There's an interesting point before we move on just on security. It's a fact, it's interesting that we can say it, but they are currently in Europe almost like a little holding pattern, and they can come in kind of when they want, depending on if they change their itinerary. You mentioned it earlier, Mark. How come they can stay as a family of 5 somewhere in Europe? And they're not presumably not going to have armed police wherever they are. Why is that not an issue? No, that's right. And earlier in the year when Meghan was in Paris, which was another public relations dumpster fire in my opinion, that's a city that's had a lot of social division, unfortunately recent terror threats and terror attacks. So it doesn't make sense. And at the heart of this, I disagree with both of you. I don't think that we should fold for a quiet life because that's what we did with the Sussexes when they were frontline serving royals. And what good did that do us? They still managed to portray themselves as victims even though, as I've said, they enjoyed unprecedented positive media coverage and the figures like the Queen, essentially bending the rules to make them comfortable. It didn't work. And the other interesting thing, just before we move on, is a question of competence and coherent messaging. The Sussexes are very chaotic in their messaging. If you remember the Oprah interview, which was so controversial, there was the accusation of racism against an unnamed member of the royal family. Then there was the backlash and the uproar. They then backtracked and said, "Oh no, we meant unconscious bias." Similarly, they're saying they want the royal security, and then maybe we can negotiate something. We're going to stay at a royal residence. Actually, we've not said yes yet. I think, bestow upon them too much sort of strategic mouse. I think they're making it up as they go along, and I think they're not doing a very good job of it. I think there's very emotional reactions. I think we've seen that from Harry. I think it seems like Meghan must be of a similar mind, where it just feels very emotional all of the time. And I think they need to learn lessons from the past in that regard. I will say one thing for the context of this. I know that the fact that this review didn't happen that was called for. This is sort of the point that's being emphasized now because they do travel to other places, etc. But it was said at the end of last year that this review was necessary. It was deemed by the people that decide these things the front page of the Sun, that after 7 years this was necessary. Now for that to be deemed necessary and then to be put on hold indefinitely earlier this year is what we're hearing. Well, why was it put on hold then? And if it was necessary, then I suppose in his mind he's saying if it's necessary, it's necessary. Why don't we have an answer? Just also briefly, there is a concern. Our mutual friend Richard Eden at the Mail is pointing out that if you feed the monster like that, and if you give them the underwall protection, they'll seek it every time they're in the UK, and potentially, then there's an argument that they get it overseas. There's no end to this. Give these people an inch, they'll take a mile. I just need to check, just if you excuse me, I need to check the Sussex WhatsApp message just to see if there's any update. I'll get PTSD. By the way, can we all, if you know. An important disclaimer, critically important, which is that we do not want the Sussexes or their children to come to harm, right? They are human beings. It's a family, and it's critically important that they remain safe. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, of course. And I think a lot of people can relate to, I think Harry's very stuck on this, but I think people can relate to the fact that he is driven by fear through his life, has had trauma in it, that it has obviously created this mindset for him. And I think there is empathy for that. And of course he does want to keep his family safe, but this is all a mess 100%. And we talked about circus earlier. We'll have to wait till next week and see what's his. I've ordered a job lot of popcorn. Yeah, we'll be out. We'll come back next week, hopefully, and talk about what's going on. Let's move on if we can. Mark, comedian, presenter, expert is a good way to describe you. But what do you pay? Well, I pay about 40% of everything that I earn. Are you happy to talk about how much tax you pay? Because the king has revealed, and he's been under pressure for quite a long time, and William has also revealed the amount of tax they paid. I think I forget the figures here because I'm terrible with figures. So Charles's tax payable for 24-25 was 12.9 million, which was up from the previous year. He is, I think he's one of the top 100 taxpayers in the UK. We know that Charles is obviously a very, very rich man. Is it right for him to? I mean, how does it make you feel the fact that Charles has revealed his tax? What's the reason behind it? Why do we need to know? Well, I think it's the context of why it's happening now, I think is very important. There has never been more scrutiny on the royal family and more calls for transparency, and I think a lot of it stems from issues in recent years, particularly around Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his former official role, and the fact that this is now getting scrutiny that it had never had before. I think that the king and also William have realized that now is an excellent time to get on the front foot with this sort of detail, and I do applaud that. I think it's important that they do see that, and this is what has been, briefed out there as well, is that they want to start an era of more transparency. This is part of that greater drive, and I think it is a crucial thing. With that said, it does also raise questions. We know he paid tax, but we don't know the breakdown of that tax at all. So it doesn't really tell you how wealthy he is, which is truly, I would like to know. In actuality, it's not a tax because if you pay it voluntarily, that's not actually a tax. But I'm being you're right. And the monarch is under no obligation to pay tax. I think it's a step in the right direction. And to be fair to Charles, he's been looking at this for a very long time. When he was Prince of Wales, he was the first heir to the throne to publish his tax return. So this hasn't been, his hand has not been forced. He's a very smart man, and he has tried to gradually modernize the monarchy since he took to the throne, and that will continue under William. It's a clever thing to do, and the British monarchy has been very successful always throughout its history of trying to be more transparent, having a good relationship with the public, upon whose largest of the Queen One Mother, those amazing images during the Blitz they get at them, and we're paying for that and that's kind of since what we do. So they're very pragmatic at their serve by the right thing to rather orange some the right thing. By the way, it's no mean feat because the tax affairs of the king and the Prince of Wales are bantane and complex. There are so many income streams, and so it's actually quite difficult to reveal how much tax you pay. But it's got to be done for the future credibility of the monarchy. What I will say, there's a lot of negative headlines about how much money they make, how rich they are. Get over it. It's the royal family. Shock horror. Royal family are rich. And also this rich stuff. I mean, so many of the assets they're not going to start selling crowns on eBay, and Charles isn't like, going to rival Andrew Tate for the number of Lambos he's got in the garage. So they are actually notwithstanding their prodigious wealth. I think they're quite parsimonious as a family. I think the Queen struck that tone. Do you remember I worked with a colleague, actually Ryan, he worked at a paper and he got a job as a footmo. And the late Queen was having a break who used to have a foofer out of Tupperwares, and they lived in the Roberts radio, Nucleo, and the Tupperware. And we know Charles is corporate colonel, so the colonial work, like collecting cords, telling it goes to the first that came to their hope. We piety and one time from human parliament, even we're very much to the area. And Grant was back. Cuss Grant now is on Civvy Street. He's a member of the public. He's a normal person. But he still uses the same dry cleaners. And he has a jacket that you see a picture of him at Highgrove a couple of years ago that he has literally had for 20 years. It's kind of threadbare, and there was a picture of him walking around in his garden. He's had it for decades. But that's why rich people stay rich, because of course it is. And I was going to say also, just quickly before we move on, I hear that was such a good point, though, that the king has led the way as the Prince of Wales with this in the past with his tax. And what I did find interesting this time around as well is that Prince William actually is the one that wasn't revealing it in the past, and now he is. So again, at this moment, and in particularly in this context, it's interesting that they are both in step in driving this new era. For the record, Prince William's Duchy of Cornwall paid $7.76 million in income tax and capital gains tax. So that's top earner as well. They're not hiding from it. It's a difficult issue, and they're hiding from it. I asked you about your tax because most people don't want to go revealing their tax or even how much they earn. I just think it's quite a brave move. Sticking with money, are they worth the money that we give them? Because the core funding of the monarchy is to jump to almost £100 million a year. I found it really interesting that it was 9.96. It's almost like when you go to a shop and something's 9.99. Oh, it's not really a tenner. It's only 9.9, but it almost does that happen when you put your receipts into the boss here at it. This interview is overusive, £100 million a year. So there's a new formula to calculate the sovereign grant, which is a very archaic, complicated system that was set up by the Tory redesigned by the Tory government about 15-20 years ago, where they get a certain percentage of the Crown Estate's profits. Obviously, the Crown Estate goes up and up and up. The money never comes down, so the monarchy never get less than last year. It can only go up, but it does face a lot of opposition. Are they worth the money? That's a great question, Matt. And as you say, that sum has been set, and it is set, and we're told about it, and now it's in place for 5 years, and then they are costing a lot, that core sovereign grant, because obviously it went up while the refurbishments or the resurfacing was happening on Buckingham Palace. This is the 369 million they spent on Buckingham and Palace over there. We'll get on to Bucket and Palace in a minute. So I won't jump ahead, but that there was an extra amount added, of course, while that work was happening. But so we're looking at the core amount. And what I found really interesting in these documents is the fact that core grant has gone up in 3 years. It's doubled. That's an end to your question. Are they worth it? Well, people, especially right now, they want to know that they're getting their money's worth. I think that there is a lot of respect for the king. We've actually seen in this era of a lot of global uncertainty that he has been playing a major role on the world stage. They do a lot of great work. Like they're at the same time, the monarchy. There was polls a few weeks ago, and I've been walking the field. And the avid support for a monarchy at once. I don't want that jump in 3 years, but if that said, I think time will tell now moving forward. There are things in place that people move in onward being role. That the king will need to stay the course. But there is constantly that question about, is the monarchy fit for purpose? Are they worth the money that we're spending on them? Well, this is the money that to almost like run their household and to run the working side of the royal family, all the engagements and the traveling and stuff like that and going abroad. Is it value for money for us? Rewrite script.